Hello, this is Steve, and I'm reading from The Wine Spectator. The Year in U.S. Winery Deals. The deal that best sums up 2025 for American wineries might be the death and rebirth of Newton Vineyard. In February, Newton owners LVMH Moet Hennessy announced that the Napa Valley Winery, which had been devastated by the glass fire in 2020, would be shuttered. But 7 months later, two wine lovers with vacation homes in the valley announced that Newton was not dead yet. They were buying it from LVMH and beginning plans to rebuild. Times are challenging for the global wine industry, from declining sales to rising tariffs, but that's led the number of winery mergers and acquisitions to dip. But deals are still being made, and they reveal where the industry is right now. Downsizing for some, opportunity for others. The biggest move of the year came in April, when Constellation Brands sold a 12 million case portfolio of mostly value-based brands to the wine group. The sale included Meiomi, Woodbridge, Robert Mondavi Private Selection, Cook's, Simi, and J. Roget sparkling wine, as well as 6,600 owned and leased vineyard acres throughout California. For Constellation, the move is another step in shifting its focus to luxury brands. It has kept 5 million cases in its wine portfolio, which includes Robert Mondavi Winery, Schrader, and the Prisoner Wine Company in Napa, Sea Smoke from Santa Barbara, and Lingua Franca from Oregon. For the wine group, the second largest U.S. wine company in volume terms, the deal is about opportunity. Vineyard values. California and Washington both face an oversupply of grapes, leading wineries to cancel vineyard contracts and growers to rip out vines. But some wineries are scooping up prime parcels. Marchesi Antinori, the Tuscan-based owner of Napa's Stag's Leap wine cellars, purchased the Arcadia vineyard from the family of Stag's Leap late founder Warren Winiarski, bringing a key source of grapes under the winery's complete control. When Duckhorn slimmed its portfolio, eliminating the canvasback brand, Washington winery Kilsada Creek purchased a top Red Mountain vineyard that Duckhorn had used for the wines. Christian Moyou expanded his Napa Valley winery Dominus Estate by buying the 86-acre Yountville Ranch vineyard from Markham Vineyards. Yountville Ranch lies between Dominus' two vineyards, Napa Nook and Ulysses, giving Moyou more than 200 acres under vine across one stretch. Endings, but also new beginnings. One of the most bittersweet announcements came in June when Sonoma winemaker Jeff Cohn, a top producer of California's Zinfandel and Syrah, announced that he and his wife and business partner, Alexandra, would stop producing new vintages and close down the wineries. Jeff Cohn Cellars, after he sells his remaining inventory. They explained that the times were challenging and that after 30 years it was time for a new chapter. But other endings proved short-lived, most notably the Newton deal. Founded by English journalist Peter Newton in 1977, the Spring Mountain property enjoyed a gorgeous garden and grounds with 68 acres of vines divided into 70 different blocks. Wildfire burned the winery and gardens, leaving only 5 acres of vines remaining. The new owners are wine enthusiasts who became friends while exploring Napa Valley. Eric Brian Suth is an attorney, and Nick Livanos is a principal at an oil refinery. They plan to make wines off-site this year and begin restoring the vineyards and cellars. It's a big task, but the wine industry could use some ambitious optimists in 2026. Guilty pleas in $99 million wine Ponzi scheme. James Wellesley stood before a judge in Brooklyn, New York, October 7th, and pled guilty to wire fraud conspiracy. The conspiracy in question, Wellesley and fellow defendant Stephen Burton have admitted to taking $999.4 million from investors in an elaborate Ponzi scheme. The two British men claimed the money would be used for high-interest loans to wealthy clients in need of quick capital. The loans would be backed by rare, collectible wines, which would be sold if the borrowers failed to pay back the loans. But those wines never existed. Neither did the borrowers supposedly taking out the loans. Instead, the money went to Burton and Wellesley, who used it for their own expenses and to pay some interest to their investors. Both men now face a decade or more in prison. Burton and Wellesley, who also used the name Andrew Fuller, started showing up at investor conferences a decade ago, claiming to be executives of a London and Hong Kong-based wine brokerage named Bordeaux Cellars. They told potential investors they could lend money to wealthy borrowers at a bind who needed fast loans, no questions asked. The lenders would receive interest at the rate of 12%, paid quarterly. Normally, such a high rate of interest means a risky loan, but Burton and Wellesley claimed that these loans would be secured with prestigious wines from the borrower's cellars, transferred in the lender's name to climate-controlled, secure warehouses overseen by Bordeaux cellars. "We only lend against investment-grade wine," said Wellesley at a 2017 conference in Las Vegas. "What happens in case of default?" asked Burton at a 2015 conference in Cancun. "We sell the wine, bearing in mind that you've loaned only 30% of the value of it. It's very easy to sell quite quickly." The pair appeared confident. Burton even went on CNBC to explain how he thought of the idea. Some payments were made to investors, but most went into the two men's pockets. Investors trying to learn more called the firm only to discover no such firm existed. Burton was arrested by British police in February 2019 at a hotel in Kent, England, with 2 fake passports, expensive watches, bars of precious metals, and South African and British currency with a total value of almost €1 million. He pleaded guilty to possession of fake passports and money laundering and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. But in 2020, he was released early, apparently due to COVID-19 concerns, and disappeared. He was arrested in Morocco in 2022, federal prosecutors say, when he tried to enter the country using a fake Zimbabwean passport and then was extradited to the United States. Wellesley was arrested in the UK by authorities in 2022 and extradited to New York in 2025. That same month, Burton came to an agreement with prosecutors and pled guilty to wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy. Burton admitted to U.S. District Judge Pamela Chen that rather than controlling a cellar of 25,000 bottles, he and Wellesley never had more than 217 bottles. As part of the deal, Wellesley will give up $1 million in profits, plus funds in more than 24 bank accounts and any wine in storage. He is facing 10 to 12.5 years in prison at his February 13, 2026 sentencing hearing, under recommended federal guidelines. Burton will be sentenced January 6, 2026, and faces 24 to 29 years in prison. He has agreed to forfeit $26 million from the scheme. In memoriam, Sam Sebastiani. Sam Sebastiani, a winemaker who helped build a California dynasty until falling out with his family led him to strike out on his own, died October 9th at home in Sonoma. He was 84. He had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 8 years ago. Born November 19, 1940, Sebastiani was the grandson of Samuel Sebastiani, an Italian immigrant who in 1904 founded Sonoma's Sebastiani Vineyards. Sam started working in the winery in 1967 and succeeded his late father, August Sebastiani, as president in 1980. In a 2014 interview with Wine Spectator, Sebastiani recalled growing up 100 yards from the family winery. "I could smell the fermentations while playing in the yard. It gets in your blood." In 1986, he was forced out over family disagreements concerning the winery's direction. Sales had been slipping since Sebastiani shifted focus to quality bottlings instead of affordable jug wines the winery was known for. In 1989, Sebastiani and his then-wife Vicky founded Vianza Winery, an Italian marketplace in Carneros, focusing on Italian varieties such as Sangiovese and Pinot Grigio. The winery, which looks like a Tuscan hillside estate, became a popular destination. A passionate conservationist, Sebastiani restored nearly 100 acres of wetlands near Vianza. In 2006, Sam and Vicky Sebastiani transferred ownership of Vianza to their children, who sold the winery the following year. Sebastiani is survived by his wife of 22 years, Robin Sebastiani, 7 children, stepchildren, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, sister Marianne Sebastiani Cuneo, and brother Don Sebastiani. Redefining luxury at Napa's Trois Noirs. A lot has changed for Jamie Arahu in recent years, yet she is still focused on the same goal, making great wine. Only her surroundings have changed. The Arahu wine is synonymous with one of the top Napa estates for Cabernet Sauvignon-based wines. Jamie's father, Bart, and his wife, Daphne, founded Arahu in 1990. Jamie was a professional actor in London and then launched her own marketing agency in France. She returned to Napa to work with the estate just a year before it was sold to Artemis SA, owned by French businessman François Pinault, in 2013. That same year, Bart and Daphne founded Ascendo. It was a big switch from their estate brand, as Ascendo made wines from purchase grapes. Jamie and her brother Greg were partners. Ascendo was made at the Araujo family's Wheeler Farms, a chic winery that also included some high-end custom crush clients. In November 2024, the Wheeler Farms facility was sold to Susanna Deal Booth. At the same time, Bart and Daphne sold the Ascendo label to Jamie and Greg. Soon afterward, the siblings sold it to a group of local vintners founded by Jack Bittner and the Pettinelli family. It was a full-circle moment, as some of the growers were already selling grapes to Ascendo. The Ascendo project was about the question, how can we leverage and work with these growers who are the best in the valley and who we've known for so many years, explains Jamie. So when two of the growers approached her with the idea of taking it over, she felt inclined to say yes, especially because she had her sights set on something else. During the inaugural Ascendo vintage, a single lot of Cabernet Sauvignon didn't fit into the Ascendo lineup. Jamie took advantage and created her own wine. Trois Noirs was born with 300 cases, French for three nuts. Trois Noirs is a nod to Jamie and Greg's children. Jamie now appears comfortable in her new home at Muséon, a custom crush facility where she and winemaker Mike Tracy make the wine. This is a working winery, she says. You have about 40 brands making wines now, everywhere from 4 barrels to pretty big projects. Then she gets more to the point. Making wine here means our prices do not have to change. Trois Noirs price tags are well below average for Napa. The Murhana Chardonnay sells for $50, the Ryan Sauvignon Blanc for $40, and Chenin Blanc for $45. There are 2 single vineyard Cabernets for $150 and 3 other reds for less than $100, a Merlot, a Cabernet Franc, and a Cabernet Sauvignon-based blend called Noisette Cuvée. Araujo is aware that some will overlook her wines because they are priced lower than typical Napa bottles, but she is intent on reminding people of the valley's roots and that there are still passionate farmers, growers, and winemakers and brands making wines that are competitively priced. I think it's good to help people understand that there are beautiful, thoughtfully crafted wines with heart and passion. You can be scrappy and very high quality. Land of Bubbly. U.S. sparkling wine producers are pushing the envelope with new styles. Champagne didn't have serious competition for much of its history, but these days everyone seems to be producing sparkling wine, even the English. Champagne continues to be the benchmark for the world, but other regions are setting their own high standards, particularly in the United States. The traditional sparkling wine houses of California, such as Schramsberg, Domaine Carneros, and Iron Horse, still lead domestically in terms of both quality and quantity. Yet newer players in Oregon, California, and beyond are pursuing excellence on their own terms, exploring different approaches at lower production levels. Technology has certainly made things easier for smaller producers to make sparkling wine. Since bubbly goes through 2 different fermentations, it requires specialized equipment that most wineries don't have. Custom crush facilities such as Brick and Mortar and Rack and Riddle now specialize in producing lots of sparkling wine for wineries big and small. Natural winemakers avoid this 2-step process by making pétillant naturel, or PetNat, an ancient way of producing bubbly that has been built a cult following in recent years. Whereas traditional sparklers begin with a finished still wine that's bottled with additional yeast, causing the second fermentation that creates the bubbles, PetNats are bottled with while the first fermentation is ongoing, so that a second fermentation occurs in the process and the bubbles are created. PetNats are typically created in small quantities and sealed with bottle caps instead of corks. They often use untraditionally bubbly grapes as well, including Zinfandel and Grenache. Producers to consider include Brock Cellars in Berkeley, Cruz Wine Co. in Petaluma, and Sauvage Spectrum in Colorado. Other producers are finding different ways to use unconventional grapes. Dry Creek just released a sparkling Chenin Blanc, and Clarksburg Cremant 2023 90 points $50. That's distinctive and refreshing, while Kendall Jackson produced its first bubbly under the Vintners Reserve label, the Brut Cuvée California NV 2020, made with the Charmat method from French Colombard Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. I was unable to review it in time for this report. In Oregon, small producers are following their own path, banding together to create Method Oregon, an organization aimed at promoting the state's growing sparkling wine industry. Wineries include Argyle, Corollary, Lytle Barnett, Rocco, and Soder, several of which are consistently producing outstanding sparklers. As these developments indicate, U.S. sparkling wine is a thriving business with a number of new projects to catch your attention. That's my conclusion based on my blind tastings over the past year. Leading the pack this year are many labels that once again made impressive tête de cuvées, with Roeder Estate, Brut Rosé, Anderson Valley, L'Hermitage 2019, 95 points, $115. Arnaud Weyrich made a gorgeous sparkler that's flush with character yet elegant and refined. Hugh Davies and his winemaking team nailed the Schramsberg J. Schram Blanc de North Coast 2016, 95 points, $150, which is typically flamboyant in an unapologetically California style with baked apple and fresh brioche accents. At 94 points, Domaine Carnero's signature bottling, Blanc de Blanc Carneros Le Rêve, 2017, $128, is a richly structured and gracefully layered, while Gloria Ferrar Brut Rosé Carneros Cuvée Late Disgorge 2019, $95, is a treat, detailed with notes of strawberry, peach, and graham cracker. Iron Horse's lovely Brut Green Valley of Russian River Classic Vintage 2021, $58, shows finesse, evoking pear, strawberry, and fresh ginger flavors. Even Champagne devotees see the value in U.S. sparklers. Of the many affordable options in my tasting this year, there are 4 I highly recommend, offering excellent quality for the price. Domaine Chandon's Rosé California NV, 91 points, $27, is creamy and festive. Paula Cornell's Brut Rosé California NV 91, $25 is succulent yet crisp. Jay's California Cuvée non-vintage 88 points, $27 is crisp and peppy. And Mum's Napa Brut Collection Prestige non-vintage 88 points, $22 is brisk and refreshing. One of the most promising new sparkling wine producers on my radar is Westbourne. A collaboration among 3 winemakers, California vintners Russell Bevan and Weston Eidson, working with Australia's Nathan Reeves, the project is off to an impressive start with its first batch of releases. The handsomely structured Westbourne Brut North Coast 2019, 93 points, $120, is distinctive for its steely minerality framed by pear, peach, and lemon zest, while the Westbourne Rosé North Coast 2019, 93 points, $120, is more richly structured with expressive strawberry, rose petal, and toasty cinnamon flavors. The team's non-vintage bottling, a refined Westbourne Perpetual Reserve, non-vintage North Coast 90 points, $100, shows fragrant notes of green apple, lemon, and toasted brioche. Westbourne was Eidson's brainchild. He approached Bevan and Reeves about the idea in 2017, and the trio set their sights high. The wine that brought us all together was Krug, Eidson says. All 3 are Champagne fans, so they studied how various houses went about making wine, starting in the vineyard. When you look at so many sparkling lines domestically, they're using one vineyard, one vintage, Bevan says. He wanted to look at what Krug does and what other great houses in Champagne do. They're using so many different components. As Eidson points out, top Champagne producers use their Grand Cru sites, the best in the region. That's what we were able to do, to take what we felt were the Grand Crus in California and paint a picture with them. With that in mind, Westbourne harvests from about 10 vineyards each season, ranging from Hudson and Hyde in Carneros to Hirsch on the Sonoma Coast and Alder Springs in Mendocino. From day one, our goal was to have literally hundreds of pieces of blending components, Bevan says. The wines, starting with the 2025 vintage, are made at Brick and Mortar's custom crush facility in Healdsburg. As in Champagne, the trio barrel ferments a small percentage of the base wine in French oak. It adds texture, and the wine kind of comes alive by being fermented in barrel, Eidson says. While 2018 was Westbourne's first vintage, the winemakers decided to release the 2019s first. We just felt like the 19s were more ready to go than the 18, Eidson explains. I look forward to following Westbourne in coming years and to seeing what other new developments emerge among U.S. sparkling producers. Based on my latest results, the future looks bright. The wines are all right. Whenever I sit down with a wine professional, the conversation inevitably shifts to the state of the wine industry. It used to come at the end of the visit. Now it's the first thing we talk about. And I get it. Things are weird. We're facing economic uncertainty, tariffs, slowing sales, an oversupply of grapes and inventory, distributor consolidation, fewer retail shops, climate change, and evolving attitudes about wine and health. In many ways, it doesn't look good. But here's what I tell people. Wine isn't going anywhere. We're going to be all right. It's not to minimize the challenges. Some obstacles are familiar, others are entirely new. Wine is historically slow to react to market trends and supply issues. But while neither annual wildfire threats nor Canada declining to import American wines were on my bingo card, despite it all, wine remains deeply woven into our culture, and not in the old pinkies up kind of way. How do I know? Turn on any screen, big or small. Comedy, drama, reality TV, wine is present. Wine is no longer a symbol of snobbery like Fraser Crane's wine references. These days, it's normalized. A housewife walks into a restaurant and casually orders a German Riesling. Jennifer Aniston's character on The Morning Show opens a bottle of Chimney Rock mid-monologue, effortlessly using a waiter's corkscrew. Wine is a go-to host gif on screen. Olivia Pope is my favorite fictional wine lover. Tyrion Lannister is my second. And it's not just the screens. Going to a Pearl Jam concert has become a 3-hour exercise in trying to identify what wine bottle Eddie Vedder is drinking on stage. Taylor Swift moved markets when she said what her favorite wines are. Chappell Roan sings about red wine supernova. Cultural presence aside, there's real momentum in the wine world. Sparkling and white wines are trending upward, and the broader movement toward freshness and elegance reflects today's preference for food-friendly, juicy styles. As a Gen Xer, no one tried to sell wine to me. That was part of the appeal. It felt aspirational as I invited myself into those rooms. But today's wine world feels much more welcoming, as it should be. Celebrity brands, fun packaging, creative marketing all invite new drinkers to the table. Canned and boxed wines, along with ready-to-drink wine cocktails, are also opening the doors wider. 6 years ago, I started writing about the better-for-you wine category. Initially, I thought it was just marketing fluff, but the more I explored, the more I realized if I expect the socks and cat litter I purchase to align with my values, why not my wine? The influx of wine brands that jump out to consumers from the shelf, the way beauty and fashion do, is a welcome change. Younger generations give me hope. Wine wasn't on my radar as a career growing up, especially as the daughter of Polish immigrants in the Cleveland suburbs. But today it's not far-fetched to dream of becoming a winemaker, even without family vineyard roots. There are now hundreds of wineries in Ohio and wineries in every state. The up-and-coming winemakers grew up with supermarket sushi, kombucha, and coconut water. Their palates are adventurous and open, which broadens the spectrum of wine styles. Innovation is thriving too, especially in the no and low-alcohol wine category. As research shows these wines are popular, not just with sober curious, but also with traditional wine lovers. We should continue to meet people where they are, with great products still made from grapes. That said, the industry faces serious issues that need addressing. With love for the topic I've spent my career exploring, here are a few thoughts. The pandemic changed how we socialize. Less dining out, fewer big celebrations. But wine has always been a social connector, especially over meals. We need to reinforce that narrative and ensure restaurant staff are trained and ready to recommend memorable pairings. The messaging around wine and health also needs attention. The elephants of abuse and hangovers will forever be in the room. But so is the fact that wine has been a part of healthy lifestyles for thousands of years. Let's reclaim that story with clarity and nuance. Most importantly, we need to remember why we fell in love with wine in the first place. Years ago, a vintner pointed out to me that no one sits around waxing poetic about the potatoes that went into their martini. But wine sparks conversation. It represents place and time. It creates memories. Let's drink to that. New energy in Southern Rhone's Lirac. If you haven't already, it's time to get to know the Southern Rhone's most underrated appellation. It's a well-known strategy for finding value. Look to wine regions that neighbor more prestigious, more expensive ones. Lirac is the poster child for this approach. Located just across the Rhone River from the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, it shares the same grape varieties, strong Mistral wind and soil types, including the famously recognizable large stones, Galets Roulés, that blanket many vineyards. An influx of new wine producers has made Lirac even more worthy of discovery as a source of wines that are very Châteauneuf-like in style, with a bit less weight and a bit more freshness. Over the past decade, well-known Châteauneuf domains have been quietly buying up land and purchasing grapes in Lirac. There are now more than 30 producers who have crossed the river to make wine there, including esteemed names like Mount Redon, Pierre Usilio, Guillaume Gonnet, Claude Montalivet, and Guigal, who purchased Château de Caria in 2022. Sure, prices are a lure, Pierre Fabre of Mount Redon reports that vineyard land in Lirac is about 10 times less expensive than in Chateauneuf. But another serious draw, according to every vintner I spoke with, is Lirac's ability to yield wines with greater freshness, a characteristic increasingly rare in a warming climate. Fabre is a big believer in Lirac. His family bought 20 hectares, 49 acres, in 1997, and he acquired an additional 27 hectares, 67 acres, with the purchase of Domaine du Gencier in 2022. Lirac Reds have the same aromatic profile as Chateauneuf, with a bit less power, but Lirac has its own personality and yields ripe, approachable reds that are complex and elegant. I believe Lirac is the best value terroir in the southern Rhone. This elegance can be attributed to Lirac's many higher elevation sites, slightly higher rainfall, and greater percentage of clay soils that help retain water. But the most important factor is the forests, insists Rudolphe de Pen, who runs his family's Château de Montfaucon, one of Lirac's finest estates. He also makes wine in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Lirac is home to more than 6,000 acres of forested land, more than twice the amount of land that is planted to vines, which cools temperatures in surrounding vineyards. I love the Montfaucon style, chewy, earthy reds that provide many such savory depth as ripe fruit. De Pen describes Lirac as the most Burgundian of all the southern Rhone Valley crus. The wines combine intensity and freshness. They show finesse even in warm vintages like 2020, 22, and 23. A much further afield newcomer in Lirac is California winemaker Adam Lee, who recently debuted his first vintage of Etienne, named for 14th century Pope Innocent VI, first name Etienne, who preferred the wines of Lirac over Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Leo co-founded Siduri Wines, based in Sonoma, and more recently Clarisse Wine Company and Beau Marchais, the latter a joint venture with the lady enologist Philippe Cambier. There are a lot of partners in the Etienne project, including Simona and Jean-François Pally, fifth-generation Lirac vignerons who craft their own outstanding Lirac label, Les Deux Pens. Etienne's two inaugural cuvées, Essen and Cornerati, from 2023, are impressive. Blends of Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre. They fall on the dark, dense, stylish end of the spectrum, balanced by refreshing, salty, and savory power, velvety tannins, and energy. The freshness we find in Lirac is very appealing, and the younger winemakers here recognize it and are working to capture that in the wines, Lee observes. As you might imagine, most Lirac producers object to the appellation's sometimes nickname Baby Chateauneuf, but the Pen doesn't entirely mind if it helps localize Lirac as a Grenache-based region neighboring one of the most famous appellations in the world. Still, he prefers to describe Lirac as a sleeping beauty, an appellation that has long lacked dynamism and investment and is finally coming out of the shadows. The energy is here now. I'm convinced that we can make wines on the same quality level on both sides of the river, but each with their own proper identity and expression, he says. With a growing number of excellent, ambitious wines coming from Lirac vintage, I'm inclined to bet on De Pen's prediction. This is Steve, and I've been reading from The Wine Spectator.